Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Genesis chapter 27 in a clear and simple way, step by step. And I've got to tell you, I am absolutely thrilled to dive into this explainer with you right now because this chapter, well, it contains one of the most intense, consequential, and emotionally charged family dramas in the entire text. Seriously, it's got it all. We're talking about a story of blatant parental favoritism, a really elaborate deception, and devastating, life-altering consequences that end up shifting the destiny of an entire family forever. It's a heavy one, but it is absolutely fascinating.
But before we really get going, I want to set the ground rules for how we're going to approach this. We are going to look at this chapter strictly through the lens of pashhat. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, it basically means we are going to explore the straightforward, literal narrative exactly as it unfolds in the Hebrew text. So we aren't going to layer in any deep Kabbalah, no mystical ideas, and no complex allegories today. None of that. We are simply going to ask the text, what exactly happens on the page, who is doing what, where are they, and why on earth are they doing it? By sticking strictly to the pashhat, this method of focused reading allows us to see the raw, very real, and very human elements of this story with incredible clarity. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the initial request for the wild gain, then look at how Rebekah and Jacob hatch their plan. From there, we'll walk right into the tense moment of the stolen blessing itself, followed immediately by Esau's reaction. Finally, we'll wrap up by clarifying a few key ideas and talking about what practical lessons we can actually take away for all this.
Let's set the stage and jump right into the text, starting with verses 1 through 4. We find Isaac in a really vulnerable state. He is old, and the text specifically points out that his eyes are so weak that he can no longer see. He is completely blind, and because of this failing vision and his advanced age, he genuinely believes he is nearing the end of his life. So feeling this urgency, he calls for his older son Esau. He says to him, "I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death." This deep sense of mortality is the catalyst. It sets the entire plot of this chapter into motion. He wants to set his affairs in order before he passes.
So Isaac asks Esau to do something very specific. He tells him to go hunt and prepare some wild game so that Isaac can give him his final paternal blessing. And Isaac doesn't just vaguely ask for food. He gives detailed instructions. He tells Esau to take his weapons, specifically his quiver and his bow, go out into the open country, hunt some wild game, and then prepare the exact kind of tasty food that Isaac loves. Now, why all this ceremony? Isaac's goal is explicitly stated right there in the text. He wants to eat this special meal so his soul may bless Esau before he dies. You see, he isn't just asking for a quick dinner. He is asking for a formal, intimate moment. He wants his hunter son to provide for him one last time, setting the right physical and emotional state for Isaac to pass on this massive prophetic blessing. But as we move into verses 5 through 17, we see that Isaac and Esau's private conversation wasn't actually all that private. Rebekah was listening. And the very moment Esau leaves the tent and heads out to the open country to hunt, she springs into action. Her goal? To secure that exact same blessing for her favored younger son, Jacob. Remember from earlier in Genesis, the dynamic of this family is pretty fractured. Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So as soon as the coast is clear, Rebekah pulls Jacob aside and urgently tells him every single detail of what she just heard his father planning with Esau. And she doesn't just give him the news, she gives him a fully formed plan. She is essentially orchestrating this entire deception right from the kitchen. She commands Jacob to go out to their flock and bring her 2 choice, prime young goats. Now you might be wondering, why goats? Well, Rebekah is clearly an expert cook. She knows that with the right spices in preparation, she can make the meat from those goats taste exactly like the wild game that Isaac loves so much. Jacob's role in this is actually pretty passive at first. His job is simply to fetch the animals, let his mother do the cooking, and then carry the food into his father's tent to intercept the blessing before Esau gets back. But Jacob hesitates, and it's really important to note here why he hesitates. Looking at the plain text, he doesn't express a moral objection to lying to his blind, elderly father. No, his hesitation stems from sheer fear of getting caught. He points out a massive flaw in the plan. Esau is a notoriously hairy man, and Jacob has smooth skin. Because Isaac is blind, Jacob knows his father is going to rely heavily on his sense of touch. Jacob literally says to his mother, "What if my father touches me?" He's terrified that if Isaac feels smooth skin, he will instantly be exposed as a deceiver, and instead of getting a blessing, he's going to bring a curse down on his own head. Well, Rebekah doesn't miss a beat.
She boldly takes the risk of that potential curse entirely upon herself. She tells him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say." And then she constructs this incredibly audacious physical disguise. To solve the problem of Jacob's smooth skin, she literally takes the hairy skins of the very goats they just slaughtered for the meal, and she ties them onto Jacob's hands and onto the smooth part of his neck. It is a desperate on-the-fly disguise. Then, to top it all off, she goes into the house, finds Esau's best, most distinctive clothes, and dresses Jacob in them. She hands him the freshly cooked food, the freshly baked bread, and sends him right into his father's room.
Which brings us to the absolute climax of the story, verses 18 through 29, the stolen blessing itself. Imagine the scene. Jacob, dressed in his older brother's clothes, with pieces of dead goat skin tied to his hands and neck, holding a plate of food, walks into the room of his blind father. He simply says, "My father." And Isaac, sitting there in the dark, unable to see who is standing in front of him, responds, "Yes, my son. Who is it?" The tension in this moment is palpable. Everything hinges on what Jacob says next.
And Jacob? He commits. He fully 100% commits to the deception. He looks right at his blind father and says, "I am Esau, your firstborn." He directly lies. And it gets worse. Isaac is a bit confused because the hunt happened so incredibly fast. Hunting wild game usually takes hours, sometimes days. So Isaac asks him, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" And Jacob boldly, without stuttering, replies, "The Lord your God gave me success." Wow. This is a severe escalation. He is literally invoking the name of God to validate a terrible lie to his vulnerable father.
But Isaac is still suspicious. Something doesn't feel right to him, so he tells Jacob to come near so he can touch him. This is literally a battle of the senses for Isaac. He reaches out and feels the rough, hairy goat skin on Jacob's hands and arms. His senses are giving him totally conflicting information. He utters this incredibly famous, almost haunting realization. The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He is so torn, so unsure, that he has to ask point blank one more time, "Are you really my son Esau?" And Jacob, locked into the lie, simply answers, "I am."
So Isaac eats the food. But the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that finally tips the scales for Isaac, is the smell. After eating the meat and drinking the wine, Isaac asks his son to come close and kiss him. When Jacob leans in for the kiss, Isaac catches the strong scent of Esau's best clothes, garments that smell deeply of the outdoors, of the earth and the wild country. Isaac breathes it in and says, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed." That scent completely overrides his lingering doubts about the voice. The disguise worked. And with all his doubts finally erased, Isaac imparts this massive, irrevocable blessing onto Jacob. He starts by blessing him with incredible agricultural and material abundance, the dew of heaven, the richness of the earth, an abundance of grain and new wine. But then he goes much further into the realm of power and dominance. He declares, "May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you." Let that sink in. He is giving Jacob complete supremacy over the family. And finally, he seals the whole thing by saying, "May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." The words are spoken, the blessing is complete, and it cannot be taken back. And talk about dramatic timing. As we move into verses 30 through 46, the text tells us that Jacob has scarcely left the room, he's barely out the door, when the real Esau returns from his hunt. Esau is completely unaware that his entire future has just been stolen out from under him. He excitedly prepares the tasty food, brings it into his father's tent, and happily says, "My father, sit up and eat some of my game so that ye may give me your blessing." You can just imagine the profound confusion. Isaac asks, "Who are you?" And Esau replies, "I am your son, your firstborn, Esau." The text explicitly says that Isaac trembled violently. Literally, he was seized with a massive, shuddering panic. He tells Esau that someone else just came with game, that he ate it, and that he gave away the blessing. And he has to confirm the hard truth, and indeed, he will be blessed. Hearing this, Esau just completely breaks down. The raw emotion in the text right here is absolutely heartbreaking. He lets out this loud, bitter cry and begs, "Bless me too, my father." But Isaac is out of blessings. Look at the stark, tragic contrast between what Jacob just walked away with and the harsh reality Esau is left with. Esau begs for any remaining blessing, crying, "Do you have only one blessing, my father?" But Isaac has already given away the material wealth and the family supremacy.
So Isaac finally answers Esau with words that sound much more like a dark prophecy than a blessing. He tells him, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother." It is a devastating blow.
And the immediate fallout of this massive deception is explosive. Esau doesn't just get mad, he gets murderous. The text says Esau held a deep grudge, and he says to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob." But of course, Rebekah finds out about this plot. To save Jacob's life, she has to immediately order him to pack up and flee. She sends him far away into exile to live with her brother Laban in Haran until Esau's fury can cool down. To get Isaac on board with sending Jacob away, she manipulates the situation one last time, complaining about the local Hittite women to ensure Isaac formally sends Jacob off. The family is entirely shattered.
Okay, let's take a quick breath. Having walked through the literal step-by-step events of the story, let's pause and clarify a couple of crucial concepts from the text so we can fully grasp the real weight of what just happened between these brothers. When Esau finds out he's been tricked, he complains bitterly that Jacob has deceived him twice. And it's really important to understand the difference between those two events. First, earlier in chapter 25, you might remember that Esau literally sold his rights as the firstborn, his birthright, to Jacob for a bowl of red stew. That birthright was largely about the physical, material inheritance, specifically getting a double portion of the family estate. But here, in chapter 27, Jacob steals the blessing. The blessing was something different. It was the official passing of authority, the mastery over the siblings, and the divine prophetic destiny of the family line. Through a mix of a bad trade and outright deceit, Jacob has now acquired both. And Esau rightly points out the profound irony in his brother's name. In his anger, he says, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? He has deceived me these 2 times." You see, the name Jacob stems from the story of their birth, where he came out grasping Esau's heel. In Hebrew, grasping the heel is an idiom for being a deceiver or a supplanter. And Esau, whose name means hairy, is also known as Edom, which means red, a direct nod back to that red stew he so foolishly traded his birthright for. So looking at the text literally, these characters are acting exactly in alignment with what their names represent in Hebrew. So, having unpacked all of that, what's the actual takeaway for us? Looking directly at the literal events of this chapter, what can we learn and how can we use this to improve ourselves? Because at its core, this is a story of deeply flawed individuals whose actions drive an enormous, painful wedge right down the middle of their family. And by looking at their mistakes, we can find some really powerful lessons for our own lives. Let's look at the simple, clear, practical lessons we can draw from this. If you look closely, every single person in this narrative plays a role in the dysfunction. Isaac tries to give this massive family blessing in secret, bypassing the rest of the family. Rebekah eavesdrops and orchestrates a massive lie rather than communicating. Jacob willingly carries out the deception, even using God's name falsely to cover his tracks. And Esau, he instantly harbors murderous intent toward his own brother. Ultimately, this story serves as a glaring mirror for us. It brilliantly and tragically illustrates the profound danger of parental favoritism. Isaac loved Esau, Rebekah loved Jacob, and that dynamic completely pitted the brothers against each other. It also shows us the deeply destructive nature of deceit. Sure, the lie worked, Jacob got the blessing, but at what cost? Trust was entirely broken. It left Isaac trembling in shock, Esau weeping and plotting murder, and Jacob running away into a long, difficult exile, permanently separated from the mother who loved him so much. It's a stark reminder that our actions, even the successful ones, have unavoidable consequences. Nobody truly wins in this chapter. So we must honestly ask ourselves, when we pursue our own goals in life, are we relying on truth, communication, and patience? Or are we grasping at the heel with deception? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.